Welcome back yet again to the Demon Slayer comparison series. Today we'll be covering episode 6 of the District Arc, which covers the rest of chapter 80 as well as chapters 81, 82, and the majority of chapter 83. This episode was absolutely insane and there's a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's get started. The episode kicks off with a recap of Tanjiro's fight with Daki with a sick new BGM that I need to hear the full version of. It's after the opening ends that the episode starts for real with some anime exclusive Sakuga. Since last episode, everything is noticeably sped up as the Obi starts to move more rapidly as it changes its path mid-attack. The Obi strands aren't being stopped dead anymore and their momentum never slows down. Daki has clearly had enough of Tanjiro, and this is even before she regains some of her power from the Obi strands Uzui was fighting earlier. From here the anime exclusive footage continues as some of the Obi strands fly into Daki before we watch the rest of them fly out of the hole across the district. Get used to cuts like this because a lot of things will be flying into the camera in the future. It's after this when the adaptation of chapter 80 actually begins. Not from page 1 obviously, as the last episode covered the first 4 pages. No, we'll actually start on page 7 this time, skipping the 2 pages of Uzui and his crew taking off. We'll get back to these panels later. On these first couple panels as the Obi travels into Daki's body, you have to wonder if Gotoge knew Ufotable would be animating Demon Slayer at this point because the camera work was set up perfectly for it. It's after that amazing camera work when the Obi enters Daki's body that we get a bonus slash from Tanjiro, as well as one additional line of him telling himself to get his breathing under control before attacking again. This leads us right into the part where Daki transforms, and since this is anime, we get to see the transformation done this time. As Daki starts her lines about how happy she is that Hashida has appeared, we get this awesome snow white texture that bleeds through her hair before turning this solid white and sickly green color at the end. As cool as the final product looks, I really do wish that it stayed that snow white texture. It looks so much cooler in my opinion. Also, as Daki powers up, we get one additional line of Tanjiro acknowledging that Daki just got stronger. Now this is the part where everything starts to get dark real fast as the bystanders start to get involved. But before everything goes to hell and back, we need to talk about some major line changes, mainly from this man right here. He has more than double the lines this time around as he complains to Tanjiro and Daki, during which we get to see more footage of some of the people whose fates will be sealed shortly. As far as this man's lines go, he only had 2 initial ones in the manga before you know what happened, and the first one is gone entirely. He no longer asks what Tanjiro and Daki are doing. Instead, he says things along the lines of, "You two need to shut up," or "What's the deal with that sword," and "What kind of harassment is this?" He also lectures Tanjiro on how everyone besides him is playing by the rules of the entertainment district and that people like him aren't welcome there. The only line that was kept in was him telling them not to fight in front of his shop. Regardless of what he says though, it doesn't matter because this is the point where Daki absolutely annihilates everything within her sight. The carnage depicted in both the anime and the manga is jaw-dropping. The bloodstained cuts of the anime are truly horrible, but some would argue to say that the manga is even more gruesome as mutilated people are illustrated in a much more visceral fashion. In contrast, the anime creates a much more emotional response as we get closer cuts of the victims' loved ones in utter shock and disbelief. Seeing the before and after of these people and how everyone around them reacts is quite the surreal experience. Examining this one over and over again was not easy. Also, in the Viz Media translation, Tanjiro says that he'll help the man tie a tourniquet for his arm when he really should just be telling the man to tie a tourniquet himself. Regardless of how kind Tanjiro is, his hands are just too full right now. Also, there's some more anime exclusive footage of the dead all around Tanjiro as he talks to Daki afterwards. As for Tanjiro's verbal exchange with Daki, this is exactly the same, so all the way up to where Tanjiro snaps and his eyes go red with rage, this is where chapter 80 ends and we move right along into chapter 81 with the flashback of Shinjiro writing Tanjiro a letter. The entire letter as put in the manga is relayed perfectly in the anime without any real major changes, although we do get the depiction of Shinjiro finishing the letter this time around. All the lines that Tanjiro had responding to that letter is also the same, but it's heightened with some additional footage of all the dead around him. But now it's time that we switch gears from sorrow to anger as Tanjiro goes after Daki before she takes off. This will officially start round 3 of their battle, so let's break it down. This time around we get to see Tanjiro take off with blistering speed, literally right as Daki is about to take off herself. In addition to that, we also get to see how Tanjiro rips off Daki's leg when he catches her. It seems like this might have been Daki's call this time, as after that initial slash by Tanjiro, she twists around to kick Tanjiro before jumping jumping away. Either way, it takes a lot of grip strength to hold on to a demon's limb to rip it off like that, so props to Tanjiro. It's also cool how we now get to see Tanjiro toss her leg away like garbage. As far as Tanjiro and the Mystery Man's dialogue goes, all this is pretty much spot on. It would be kinda cool if we got more side-by-side shots of the two of them like this one here, but the parallel shots make up for that with some nasty transitions as the lines switch between the two with chromatic tears and blood-soaked blades. The darkness of these scenes are exemplified with harsh film grains as well as the black to red vignettes surrounding our Mystery Man here. And to make things even scarier, now we see him charge again as the commercial break starts. So far, the first half of this episode only adapted about 1 chapter's worth of content, but as you all know, there are roughly 4 chapters to cover in this episode, so things are about to get hectic. As far as the commercial break cuts go though, these weren't too hard to find this time, as they both exist on the title page of chapter 82. We're not quite at that chapter yet though. Instead, we'll be going back to revisit the 2 remaining pages on chapter 80 with Uzui and his posse getting ready to take off. Here we see some establishing shots of the gang as well as the flexing ninja mice before getting into the panel where Inosuke criticizes Uzui for letting the obi parts get away. Or at least he tries to. There are some minor changes here. Firstly, after Makio says to Uzui that he should get after Daki, Suma says one additional line saying that they'll be fine on their own. Makio does give the impression that they'll be going with Uzui in the Viz Media translation, but whatever. As far as Uzui's lines afterwards go though, they're spread out over some anime exclusive footage of Uzui throwing Inosuke and Zenko out of the hole as he tells them to follow the obi and get a move on. Up to where Inosuke exclaims how fast Uzui is, this is where we finally finish out chapter 80 and go right back to where we were in the middle of chapter 81. After an additional inconsequential line from Daki, the back and forth dialogue between Daki and Tanjiro is once again word for word identical. So now we move right along to where Tanjiro charges in to continue round 3. The anime kicks it off well with this badass lean in from Tanjiro before becoming a blur of speed and death. What's also cool is that this time around we can see how Daki sets up her first Blood Demon Art attack. The 8-layered slash rustles around the camera multiple times, sometimes clouding our vision completely for the setup of the wider cut showing all the 8 obis up in the air as they prepare to cross paths. For the next page or so as we watch Daki talk up her own abilities, this part is also pretty much exactly the same as we watch everything happen in slow-mo up to where Tanjiro uses Burning Bones Summer Sun. The introduction to this attack in particular is stunningly accurate to the clear blue sky attack we saw him use in the Mugen Train arc. But as you can see, they didn't just add more rings to the attack, they completely reanimated the fire effect it produces. With how similar these two look, they probably could have gotten away with reusing the same cut, but that's just not how Ufotable does things. After that move is completed, we get the stunning shot of all the obi strands and the fire remnants flying through the air together before Daki reacts to what just happened. And if Ufotable wasn't already going crazy enough, they used Daki's lines of desperation to go ham in the animation department, because while all of Daki's lines are the same, the visuals have a lot of new stuff to offer. For one, we get some more intense slashes and deflections from Tanjiro. The impact of these speedier slashes come from the even harsher spark effects emanating from Tanjiro's sword as the blood from the obi mixes with the flames of Hinokami Kagura. You can really see how much better Tanjiro is performing as there's basically no wasted movement at this point. Before and after every attack, he has these very subtle movements, like a spring being cocked back as he gets ready to extend into the next move. It's stuff like this that just screams focus. Nothing else is on Tanjiro's mind besides the fight at this point, and it really shows. Even when he doesn't have much time to spring back when he's doing consecutive blows, his eyes never lose their target. After that consecutive attack, we get some anime exclusive footage of Daki retreating to a rooftop miles away as Tanjiro takes chase. The cut of Tanjiro chasing her through the air is one of the coldest cuts thus far as it transitions from a deflect into Tanjiro's leg getting ready for an aggressive landing. He was landing so fast that the obi didn't even have time to react to him and didn't get there in time as Tanjiro goes in for the death blow. As cool as that all was though, it unfortunately won't be that easy as Daki turns her neck into an obi to avoid decapitation. As Daki talks to Tanjiro with her wavy neck, this is actually the last panel on chapter 81. So now we move right along into chapter 82 as Tanjiro still tries to get his sword through her neck. When Daki finally retaliates, we get some different movements here. In the manga, it looks like Daki made a fist to either command her obi or to try to hit Tanjiro before he retreats from her. The anime, on the other hand, shows Daki send an obi to the ground as they both retreat from each other as Daki sends a total of 13 obi strands to Tanjiro. And yes, I did count them. It's kinda hard to tell if there's actually 13 obi strands in this panel as some might be seen off screen, but I'll take Otoge's word for it. Real quick, as Tanjiro watches the strands approach him, it's worth noting that Viz Media made Tanjiro say that he isn't capable of dodging them, whereas it should be that he can't because that would cause more damage to the area. Besides that though, if you watch Tanjiro fight them off in slow motion, you can see the absolutely insane reaction time that Tanjiro really has now as he uses the side of his blade to redirect the obi as he pleases. The far out shot here has the collisions kind of hidden behind the obi strands in the foreground, but up close you can really see it firsthand as he deflects the final 4 strands into the same area, and they seem much closer together this time, making it much easier for Tanjiro to pin them all to the roof. The way they all flow together after they're pinned is almost entrancing in nature and oddly satisfying to look at, especially when Daki tries to recall them. Now, this is the part I was looking forward to the most. The scene where Tanjiro lets loose to cut every single strand before going for Daki's neck again is hands down the best piece of Sakuga we've seen this arc. So there's a lot to talk about here, but first and foremost, I need to give credit where credit is due. Now, I normally don't talk about key animators because crediting the right person for any given scene can be extremely challenging at times. With that being said, I'm 99.9% sure that this scene was done by Nozomu Abe. This guy has quite the reputation. I'll let you guys look up the plethora of work this guy has done in the anime space, but for reference, it's believed that this is the guy that did one of my personal favorite cuts of all time, from Fate Lost Butterfly 2 in the final attack with Saber vs. Berserker. As a standard bearer in the Fate series, his effect work is par to none, especially when it comes to these effects flying off of swords. For an attack that took up a whole page in the manga, this man animating it was the only logical decision. It goes without saying that this attack is done on 1s, except for the obi that's done on 2s, maybe just to show how faster Tanjiro is compared to Daki. Getting into the meat of this sequence, the start of the attack houses some smear frames mixed in with fire effects before he leaps up into the air. Watching the shot right afterwards is like watching a baseball fly through the air before it hits you square in the face. You can really feel Tanjiro's power building while airborne, as chunks of flames are already breaking off his sword before he can even finish his flip. After essentially destroying our viewpoint with an impact frame, we watch Tanjiro through the burning obi before we get into the realest meat of the key animation itself. Within these 5 seconds of buttery smooth glory, Tanjiro slashes the obi 6 to 7 times. I say 6 to 7 because the extended last slash cuts the obi down the middle to Daki and could be considered a continuation from the slash prior. Keep in mind, he's not just slashing 1 strand at a time here, he's slashing 13 at a time. If you add in the first slash from the cut prior, that's at least 91 sliced obi strands in this sequence alone. It's not just how many he cut though, it's the way he cut them. Starting with a dolphin dive, over time he starts putting his entire body weight into it as he does 2 additional front flips before landing on the roof to do a mid-lane carve all the way past the camera and onto Daki's neck. With how many different positions he struck up in this short but fast cut, it's incredibly impressive how seamless the motion looks here. He really makes this look like light work, especially right afterwards as we see the obi cut like stacks of wavy paper in the air as a heat wave bursts forth from Tanjiro, who's now within range of Daki. It's before that heat wave hits that we watch the camera start from right to left as it struggles to catch up with Tanjiro at the end. From the few frames of it trying to catch up though, you can see the long trail of carnage that Tanjiro left behind, even if it is just full of motion blur. This effect combined with everything else just screams aggressive fluidity, with not just the movements of Tanjiro and the obi, but the lava-like state of Tanjiro's Hinokami Kagura as displayed especially so when the sword draws closer to Daki's neck. Really, we could watch this scene all day, but as for how it compares to the manga, Tanjiro's takeoff into the air is far more grounded, as it's just a simple quick front flip before he slashes the obi 4 times? I don't know, it's kinda hard to tell, but it's definitely not as much as the anime. Noticeably, there isn't quite as much fire in the air as shown in the anime, but otherwise there really isn't much else to compare here. Except for the fact that maybe Tanjiro doesn't seem to shake his sword in the manga as he listens to his dead sister, but his hand does seem to cramp up as he gasps for air. Ultimately though, this is where Tanjiro vs. Daki comes to a premature end, as Tanjiro drops to the ground and Daki says how pathetic humans are. Pretty cocky for someone who's about to get decapitated. But this line by Daki actually comes later on in the manga, as right after Tanjiro collapses, there are 5 vacant narration panels explaining in further detail what just happened to Tanjiro. It's a shame that this wasn't relayed in the anime, so for you anime-only watchers out there, I'll summarize it. Essentially, it says that due to his anger, Tanjiro ignored his physical limits. This is what caused the blood to rush to his eyes. But fighting like this consistently burns away your life force. If you pass your life force limit, then death is certain. Ultimately, exceeding your limits fueled by nothing but emotion is something that humans can't do for long. If it worked, demons would have been exterminated a long time ago. In conclusion, Tanjiro's dead sister pretty much saved Tanjiro's life as she stopped him from passing that limit. I really do wish this information was in the anime because it plays very well into what's about to happen next as Nezuko goes in with the roundhouse kick of doom, blasting Daki's brain matter into the anime exclusive power lines. Soon afterwards, we would see half-faced Daki start talking back to Nezuko, but once again there are some more narration panels before that weren't adapted in here. These ones aren't too important, they say things that we already know, like how Nezuko's memories of her lost family are starting to stir within her, as well as the fact that she never fought an enemy quite like this one before. It should be after that when Daki starts cussing out Nezuko while remembering Muzan's orders to take Nezuko out. But right before that flashback starts, we officially end the adaptation process of chapter 82. But the manga chapter isn't actually done. No, the anime leaves the final 3 panels unadapted, as the narrator builds on what he said earlier about the limits of humans. Again, to summarize, the manga goes on to say that demons have no such limits as mentioned earlier. Their anger can fuel them for as long as they like with no repercussions. This dichotomy was never laid to us in the anime, it's up for us to decipher this message ourselves. Now with only 4 minutes left in the episode, we start off chapter 83 with the flashback of Muzan giving Daki the headlap treatment. This scene is also pretty much picture perfect, so now we move on to the second big battle of the day, Daki versus Nezuko. So let's break it down. To start, when Nezuko jumps in, she does an extra jump before reaching Daki, kind of like Tanjiro did earlier, except, Nezuko gets completely severed by Daki. The anime is a bit more gruesome in this regard, especially when watching in slow motion as we watch her mutilated arms slide across the obi as her body weight is being shifted to the right. In the manga, we only see her completely torn in half during Daki's recollection, whereas in the anime we see this after Daki swings Nezuko around a few times. It's shown right after she collides with the building, with about 5 blink and you'll miss it frames of Nezuko's split body flying towards the camera. After Nezuko comes to a stop in the rubble, we'll be skipping ahead 5 panels of Tanjiro's dead brother talking about the siblings all the way up to where Daki lands where Nezuko is. Don't worry, these panels will come later. As Nezuko is getting up and chomping on her bamboo gag, she actually destroys it this time instead of simply letting it go. Also in the manga, there is a slight error where the strap on her left side breaks on page 10 but then magically fixes itself on page 12 only to break yet again. Now we're in the part where Nezuko goes through a stunning transformation. The transformation itself is really just 2 panels in the manga, but again, this is what anime was made for, as we watch her hair fly up, her back grow bigger, as well as the first representation of how those vine-like things started growing around her new body. As Daki tries to wrap her head around what's happening, we rewind a little bit to the 5 panels we skipped over earlier, as Tanjiro's brother talks about the siblings. But this dialogue is pretty much spot on, there's really nothing to mention, so back we go. Now that Nezuko is reborn, she charges in with her favorite roundhouse kick, but her takeoff is far more different this time and even faster than Tanjiro's as she vanishes from the broken ground underneath her feet right into Daki's face. Just like last time, she gets that leg cut off, but wait for it, there it is. She finally manages to land a blow by getting her leg back as soon as it was lopped off. Just like in the manga, this happens so fast that you might not even realize what she did the first time around. The manga does show a brand new leg coming in as it does in the anime, but it's a lot faster this time. It's really just a couple of frames. As you can see, anatomy wise, the framing of her foot makes a little more sense this time as she'll be stomping the life out of Daki 1 second later. After some sick impact frames, Daki finally hits the ground with a large thud. The last thing we see from this episode is the low-angle shot of Nezuko's face to put a stop to the adaptation of chapter 83 as the episode ends right here. There's still 2 pages left, but that'll have to wait until next week as that's probably when they'll be adapted. But now episode 6 is fully complete, and that means it's numbers time. With a normal runtime of about 24 minutes, this episode housed about 18.5 minutes of new canonical content, adapting 2 full chapters and 2 incomplete ones. These chapters combined housed a total of 69 pages and 246 panels. Likewise, this episode housed a total of 341 unique cuts. I excluded the impact frames and transition frames for this number. This leaves us with about 95 anime exclusive scenes this time around. All in all, this was the best episode thus far, and it really gets you hyped to see the amazing animation we can expect from here on out. If you guys like this comparison and breakdown, you could do me a huge favor by leaving a like, sharing it with a friend, and subscribing if you enjoy content like this. It's going to be really exciting to see what happens next. Well, until then, I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Registry, signing off.